Muy buenas tardes. Siendo las 16:07, les saluda el profesor Cristian Cristóful, coordinador del Departamento de Inglés del Instituto Superior de Lenguas, y se da inicio a la defensa virtual de Tesina acorde a la resolución número 1374/2022, que fija fecha y hora de la Tesina con el título The Development of the Theme of Art in John Keats' Ode to a Nightingale and an Ode to a Grecian Urn, a cargo del autor Isao Taniguchi Agüero, de la carrera de lengua inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas, el día de hoy, viernes 14 de octubre del 2022. En calidad de presidente del Tribunal Examinador, nos acompaña el profesor Ángel Aquino. Muy buenas tardes, profesor.
Buenas tardes, Isao Taniguchi. Buenas tardes a todos. Isao, you will have 30 minutes from now on to present your dissertation. After your presentation is done, there will be some questions from the professors, Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Bento. So good luck, Isao Taniguchi, and the best for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So let me start. Allow me to show my screen and we'll see. There you go. So today I'm gonna let you know and explain a little bit of the process that I took here in my research project that was like quite a journey for me. So the title is The Development of the Theme of Art in John Keats' Ode to a Nightingale and Ode on a Grecian Urn. So these two poems are quite famous, like in English literature, and John Keats is one of the most renowned authors in the English language. And these two poems are part of a group of poems called the Great Odes that was written in 1819. Okay, so they're part of the most acclaimed pieces of work by John Keats. I'm talking in general about the Great Odes, and these two poems are like really special, even like for other other researchers who were looking into the Great Odes. Like during his lifetime, John Keats was not a very appreciated author. Like he was heavily criticized, and his work was not very loved by others. But nowadays, like now that he's dead, we all love his work, right? So it's a thing that usually happens. So that's the thing. That's kind of the background of these poems. So the problem in itself is that both of these poems, they have the theme of art in common, right? So both poems deal with this theme. But this theme has not yet been fully analyzed and studied by researchers. So this is what happens in this research. What I attempted to do was to fully analyze the theme of art and the relationship with the other themes in each one of the poems in order to increase the knowledge that already exists. Because like these poems are old, right? That's the reality. So there's been a lot of work on them, but you, like in literature, that's the beauty of literature, that it's never complete, right? And this provides a little bit more towards that completion. So that's the main issue. So the purpose, as I mentioned recently, is to fully examine the development of the theme of art and how this theme relates to the other themes and symbols in both of these odes, and compare and contrast the ideas that you get from analyzing everything that the text presents, right? Such as stylistic devices, symbols, themes. And we do that in order to gain a better understanding of both works and a better understanding of the ideas about art that are presented in these works, such as the purposes, limitations, capabilities, and characteristics. So all of these, we do it combining stylistic analysis and the new criticism approach, which I will be describing shortly. So these are some specific objectives that I had that will help me meet the main purpose of this study, right? So first, we identify the stylistic devices in both poems and understand the purpose. Then we identify the main themes and understand how they develop in the texts. And then we establish a relationship between the themes, symbols, and stylistic devices in order to understand the theme of art and how it develops. So I came up with some research questions that I answer across the whole work, basically. What stylistic devices are used in both poems and what are their purposes? How does the theme of art develop throughout Ode to Nightingale and Ode to a Grecian Urn? What is the relationship between the theme of art and the other themes, and how these relationships build the theme of art, which is our main focus, right? And like, are there any similarities and or differences between the ideas about art presented in both works, right? Because in Ode to a Nightingale, you might say X thing about art, but on the other poem, you can say the complete opposite, right? Because it is how it works. And those are the research questions. So the significance of the study, as I mentioned before, is we attempt to increase the existing pool of knowledge exploring the theme of art. And this can create new questions for further research on the topic, right? And then it might also have some significance in the fields of aesthetics, which is the branch of philosophy, I'm sorry, that deals with beauty, right? The understanding of beauty, what's beautiful, and how moral is related to beauty and art. Okay, so in literature and philosophy, it might have some relevance. Okay, so according to the limitations and delimitations, I see that the main delimitations that I have are that this work does not attempt, like, at all to discover anything about the author's ideas, beliefs, or life. Right? The author, on like in this work, we don't care about him or any of his ideas or beliefs or whatever his life was. That's not relevant for us. Also, we do not attempt to relate the two poems to the great odes in general, to the rest of the odes that John Keats wrote in this period that I mentioned in the introduction, right? So it's only these two pieces of work. It's by no means I attempt to relate them to the other ones. And in regards to limitations, the new criticism approach, to a certain degree, can be considered a limitation because it only deals with the text itself, right? We do not take into account the author's ideas or the author's intentions or the speak of the reader's feelings, right? All of that is set aside. We only focus on the linguistic aspect of the text. And another limitation is that linguistic ambiguity generates several interpretations. That happens with all of the texts that you will analyze. Like, could be poetry, it could be prose, whatever genre, you will find this problem, even in nonfiction. So yes, that's regarding that. So allow me to tell you a little bit before we start into getting into the real thing. Let me tell you a bit about the approaches that I chose to address this topic. Firstly, we have which has a huge body of theory behind it, but the main ideas from neo-criticism and the most important ones that I followed in this research is, first, the principle of organic form, which says that every part of the text has to work together. They depend on each other. all the formal elements of the work, they work together in order to establish the meaning of the text, right? So for that, you cannot set aside themes, for example, and just focus on symbols. You cannot set aside only stylistic devices and focus only on one thing, because you have to take a look at everything to find the true meaning of the text as per the new criticism approach, right? Then we have the second principle that's really important, that is the heresy of paraphrase. So it says that form and content create the meaning of the text. So paraphrasing is it's heresy for them. So for example, I don't know, you can think about the sentence, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." You say that to a priest or in a confession, right? Or and then you have the other sentence in which you paraphrase it and say, "Sorry, Daddy, I've been bad." That's your child telling you, "I'm sorry, Daddy, because I ate chocolates," right? When I shouldn't have to, right? So that's what they focus on. The form that is in the original text and the content that it has is what create the meaning of the text itself. Paraphrasing it is some sort of heresy. You cannot do that. And what we do, like when we do literary criticism or this type of work that I did, is paraphrasing a lot, right? So this kind of goes against the idea, but it is what you have to face when you have like a huge philosophical issue of that matter, right? It is the difficult work of this, the tough part of this, right? Like staying true to the true meaning of the text. And then we have the intentional and affective fallacies that say that the author's intention, like it doesn't matter. Maybe Keats wrote Ode to a Nightingale in 2 days, and in one day he was moody and angry, but then the next day he had a cup of coffee in the morning and he was happy. Doesn't matter. The author's intention does not matter at all, because the true meaning lies in the text. Whatever he intended is irrelevant. And the reader's emotions have no influence on the text either. So maybe you have had these
I need my
experiences in
phone.
the past, but that does not really matter. The text is the text, it's a living entity, it's an organic form, and as such, you have to respect it and
Thank you.
take a look at it in a very objective manner, right? Now, new criticism did not put any sort of specific way of addressing a text, and that's what made it difficult. Okay, so you could address a text in many different ways. Like you could take a look at certain things and like omit others, and for that purpose I added to my approaches stylistics. Okay, so stylistics links the disciplines of literature and linguistics. Okay, so it allows you to use linguistic concepts in your analysis, and it makes it much more complete, right? So it you put a lot of emphasis, you put the first place on language, okay, and it goes hand with new criticism, which is something that I truly appreciated. So I thought, okay, these two could go together to give a more specific and more precise, and to a certain degree more scientific in what could be to as much as we can. We try to be scientific in this type of work, right? um, so that's what I thought in regards to stylistics. So the idea is not to simply describe the formal features of the text, but to also explain the purpose. Why is there a metaphor in this specific place? Why not saying it just plainly, right? Maybe saying it plainly would yield better results. So there is all an explanation. And in the paper that I wrote, in the report that I wrote, it's very, very detailed, right? But here, for the sake of time, I'm gonna just go through it just giving a brief overview of what I did, right? So the methodology, the way I went by in this study is I followed a descriptive method and a qualitative approach, and I did some literary analysis using new criticism and stylistic analysis. Okay, so the data collection was fairly simple because I only used the texts. That was the main. They were the main and the only sources of data that I had. Of course, I did the literary review, the literature review, to get information on the existing pool of knowledge that I wanted to increase, right? But the work itself is I only got it from the text itself, right? So the process that I followed was I performed close reading of both poems. Close reading is a type of reading in which um, you focus on every word, on every comma, on every period, right? Everything matters. So I performed that reading on both poems, and I searched and identified stylistic features and rhetorical devices. That would be metaphors, personification, everything that they teach you at high school, right? And then I went into each stylistic feature and device and categorize it in three main groups: devices of meaning, devices of sound, and devices of structural arrangement. Okay, so there are devices that deal exclusively with sound, for example, like repetition or alliteration, assonance, consonance, all of those. They all have very specific purposes, but they only deal with sound. They help devices of meaning carry the meaning of the text in itself, but they only have to do with sound. And then the structural arrangement, that would be the point of view of the poem. For example, like we have a he or a speaker in both poems. And so it's a he, a third person view, right? And then the rhyme scheme, which is like heavily ornamented and complex in both poems. That's so very well crafted. So we take a look a bit at into those matters as well. And then the interpretation on each poem is given individually. One interpretation for Ode to Nightingale, interpretation on Ode and a Grecian Urn, and we base those interpretations on the stylistic devices that we just found out. And then a comparison between the two interpretations is made in order to see how the ideas about art are similar and different in the poems. So that's the whole process I followed for this research. Okay, so let's begin with the research in itself, like what I did to work on it. Okay, so firstly, I took my time and took a look at the stylistic devices of meaning. Okay, so I don't know, maybe you would like to follow along with this. So if you have my report open, the thesis file open, you will find in the appendixes, the appendix number one is Ode to a Nightingale, the whole poem, and appendix number two is Ode on a Grecian Urn, the whole poem, right? So allow me to walk you a little bit on how I did this. Or if you didn't have the thing open, let me send you a link. You can see it in the Google Meet chat. It's a link to the poem itself, right? So uh, there, okay. So in the first stanza, focusing on the stylistic devices of meaning, we see that the speaker attempts to explain their feelings. So that's how the poem Ode to a Nightingale begins. It's a speaker, it's a man uh, trying to, man or woman, I don't know, a speaker, trying to explain their feelings. Okay, so the main devices that we see here are ambiguity, oxymoron, simile, and allusion. Okay, so allow me to show you a bit of an example on each, right? So let me share with you. Hopefully you can see, or let me make it bigger. There you go. So it starts with the words "my heart aches." All right, so there you can already see some sort of ambiguity. This is I'm just giving you an example, right? You see the ambiguity where you see "my heart aches." Is the speaker referring to literal heartache in which he's physically aching, or is he referring to the expression that we say when we break up with our partners, like, "Oh, I have such a heartache," right? When he's feeling very sad. So there you already start seeing that it's the main mood, this obscurity, it's already being established at the very beginning with the very first three words, right? So we don't know. Is the speaker feeling very sad, or are they feeling happy? Because take a look at this. It's kind of it's very interesting, right? So he says, "My heart aches. I am feeling a numbness that pains my sense, as if I had drunk some sort of drug." And then he says, "'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness." Right? So he's actually feeling happy for the bird. So what are you feeling, man? Are you sad? Are you happy? What is this? Right? So the reader is confused. This is kind of open-ended. Like that's the main feeling that drives this poem, the idea of open-endedness. And that's a classic Keats. He he never gives you an answer. So it begins like that. It's confusing. Is he happy? Is he sad? Or is he changing moods quickly? Like, what's happening? Is he on drugs? What's wrong? Right? So you have that. Then we have the device of oxymoron, for example, right in the very first stanza. So take a look at these words. So he says, "My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense." A drowsy numbness pains my sense. So numbness, the meaning of numbness is that you are not feeling anything, right? When your arm is numb, they touch you and you don't feel anything. But then the next word, the verb, says pains my sense. Then you are saying, like, what? So if you pay attention, like if you go quickly through it, then it's fine, right? Drowsy numbness pains my sense, sounds good, it's fine, I can deal with that. But if you stop and think, you say numbness pains my sense. Like, what are you feeling? Are you feeling something? Are you sad? Like, are you numb? What's wrong? So it's very, very confusing. And that's the main, the driving thing for Ode to a Nightingale. And as you will see in the future, for Ode on a Grecian urn as well. So it carries the beauty of the poems. They appear, apart from the form and the sound, is in how kind of confusing is, right? So how you, when, I don't know, sometimes when humans are feeling, I don't know, with too much pressure, you see that explaining your own feelings is not that easy, right? I don't know, maybe you go to therapy and you talk to your therapist, and you have no idea on how to explain how you feel about certain things. Okay, so that's exactly what's happening to our speaker here, to a Nightingale. And it creates such a strong connection with the reader, for those matters, right? But okay, so let's continue. Then we have devices of simile and allusion. Okay, so these devices, they help you um, understand the idea that it's not that easy to express my feelings. That's what the speaker is saying. So he says, "A drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk." He is comparing his feelings as if he had drunk hemlock, which is some sort of poison, right? That comes from a plant. And then he adds, "or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past." So he's not sure. Is it like this or is it like that? So that device of simile is increasing the complexity of the text. So that's the main purpose. Like, add more complexity and make it more obscure to a certain degree for the reader. Okay, that's what we see. Then we see allusion, right? When we make a reference to a certain thing in the text, and here you see it in the light-winged dryad of the trees. A dryad is a spirit of the tree, uh, from Greek mythology, right? So he's making an allusion to Greek mythology, and like that, by thinking about spirits, he makes this mood more magical. Because take a look at the words here. Melodious plot of land we are talking, right? Of beech and green. Beech is a tree, right? So it's a tree of a very particular green. It's a very, very foresty green. So he's setting those images in your mind and then talking about dryads, talking about spirits. So you think about this fairy magical landscape. And this is just a man, by the way, this is just a man, like probably in his garden, listening to a bird passing by. That's all that happens in Ode to a Nightingale. But this is like he's creating such a beautiful thing, like making you think about, wow, magical forests and spirits, right? So you say, oh, this guy smoked something before writing this, but it has to be there. It's beautiful. So connotation and word choice, they help build the mood. They help you build the idea of the setting where the speaker is, right? So that's how I went with all of the stanzas and with all of the verses, right? So uh, this is what I did basically. Then a brief overview. The second stanza is a happy stanza. They speak about dancing and music, freedom, drinking alcohol, and everything, right? So that's how it works for all of this, right? Then, like switching from all the stylistic devices of meaning and everything and sound, I went to the themes, which is basically one of the most important parts of everything, right? So Ode to a Nightingale and Ode to a Grecian Urn, they address basically the same themes in both poems, if you take a look, even if they speak of very, very different things, okay? So the themes are imagination, immortality, death, and then you have happiness and pain, escape from reality, and that's basically how they work. So happiness and pain present throughout the whole poem, and it is related to art by causation. Okay, so art is a means to create happiness. It's a reason for feeling happy, and it escapes, is above human pain. So that's the main idea that you get from happiness and pain and art in Ode to Nightingale. Then escape from reality is related as to art by dependence, right? So in order to escape from reality, the speaker attempts to use art in this uh, in this poem. Okay, so all of these put together lead you to very different types of conclusions. Okay, so here we have the themes on aggression, or which are basically the same: imagination, beauty, uh, art and happiness and pain, on all of the different parts. Okay, so the main conclusion of everything is that uh, we see a strong relationship between art and the rest of the themes, and they all help art build itself as a theme in itself, and art helps each one of the other themes to build on its own, right? So they all work as a very, very uh, tightly knit net of 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 organic entity. Okay, So that's exactly what we have. So some conclusions that I reached from about the ideas of art are that uh, art is an element that has the power to be beyond human sorrow, and it's able to create happiness. And as long as it represents the natural human life cycle, it will create some sort of of happiness in the reader or in the person who is appreciating art. Imagination and art are knit together because it is imagination that gives life to art. Art in both poems is seen as something immortal, something that will never die. And then we have art and beauty and death. Art will be beautiful as long as it deals with the cycle of life, which ends in death. So it will always carry this beauty and will help you escape the anxiety that death generates. Okay, so those are the main ideas that I got from these two poems. Okay, so do you have any questions in
Thank you very
regards?
much for your dissertation, Isao. We really did enjoy it. There are a couple of questions I would really like to ask you, Isao. And the first question that comes to my mind is, why did you choose the new criticism approach? Because I was thinking about that you maybe could have done the real response theory or maybe the historical approach, because this poet, John Keats, is pretty much from the Romanticism period, along with Shelley and Lord Byron. So that is my first question. Why do you choose this approach, new criticism? And my second question is something that has to do with the intentional and the internal fallacies. What do you mean by that? If you can explain again, because I know you already did in your presentation. So
Sure
please
thing.
go ahead, Isao.
Sure thing. So the main reason why I chose the new criticism approach is because it deals with the text only. Okay, so it establishes clear limitations for the work. Okay, so readers' response would give me a much more original work because my feelings would be in there, right? So here there is not much of what I feel
Mami,
in regards
me estaban
to the
esperando
poems or
en la
anything,
defensa de tesis
but
y
the
yo
idea here was to find out the relationship
sí
between
tenía.
art and the other
Hace 2
themes.
días que ya le
And
mandé
for
mail
that
a
I
todos
only
y ya puse
need
en el
the
calendario
text
para
itself.
que entre
Okay,
nomás a la
so
sala. Y
I thought,
entraron todas a
okay,
la sala
let's
y yo no
do
estaba.
art
A
and
las
the other
4
themes,
y
and for
4 y
that I
7
don't need
empezamos.
my feelings. I don't need the author's intention for this.
En el grupo
I
decía, estoy
only need
esperando que
the
Cristian me
text.
acepte.
And that's
Y
exactly what
yo,
I did. Okay, so that's why I chose the new criticism
no,
approach.
me olvidé,
We took a
me
look at
olvidé.
everything, at all the themes, all the symbols, all the stylistic devices, and we linked them together to find out
Ya
how
está
they
con la
are
pregunta ahora.
related to each other and to find out bigger
Es,
ideas,
es un
general,
placer
universal
escucharle a
ideas
este
about
muchacho,
art.
mamá.
So it serves the purpose better
¿Sabe
than
cómo se
reader's
llama?
response or historical
Isao
approach.
Taniguchi.
That's why I chose it. And
Paraguayo. Agüero
regarding
es
the
su segundo
second
apellido.
question, um,
Pero los tabullos de
the
filosofía en la
intentional
resolución
and
dice
affective fallacies.
la
So,
estudiante Isao
new
Taniguchi.
criticism as an approach does
La
not take into
estudiante
account the
Isao
author's
Taniguchi.
intention. Okay, so there comes the
Erótico.
intentional fallacy part. So if I say
Sí,
something
porque Vico no busca
in
en
my
Google.
research, if I attempt to say kids meant blah blah blah, he had the intention to mean, then I'm not following the new criticism approach, right? Intentional author's intention is not relevant. And affective fallacies, the affective part refers to the emotions that the readers have in regards to the text. Okay, so you will interpret a text based on your previous experiences, right? Maybe you were also the person who was sitting in his garden listening to a bird and drinking your coffee, right? And you will see the text in that way. Okay, so all those emotions that you felt, it's beautiful, right? But it doesn't serve the purpose of finding the meaning of art and and the ideas of art in this poem. That's why I chose the neo-criticism approach. So they both go together.
Thank you very much, Isao. Professor Ortiz, and then maybe Professor Bento, please, with your questions or inquiries. I cannot hear you, Mrs. Ortiz. We cannot hear you, Professor Ortiz.
Okay.
Okay, okay, very
Okay,
good.
perfect. Have you considered doing the same study of other pieces of poetry? Well, yes, I have considered doing that for many other pieces. Thing is, it takes a lot of time, but I have for sure. I have like romanticism is one of my favorite periods of literature. So people can benefit from this type of analysis while learning English. Oh, you mean from a right from a teaching perspective, like teaching this into well, yes, I would love like that's my dream as a professor. Like if I could ever teach at some place, I would love to teach this type of work, right? To encourage students to find meaning in literature, because literature is not only that boring thing that you do at school where they force you to read books. You can find a lot of meaning. You can find a way of seeing life that's different. Like when you read the Russians, for example, you see how depressed they were, and but you see how real their words are. Or you see Mr. Keats right here, and you feel like he's your partner, right? Because I don't know how to express my feelings sometimes either, right? So the beauty of literature lies in interpreting it in your own way, seeing it, finding a new way of seeing things. So yes, I have considered it, and it is my dream to teach this to students, be it for EFL textbooks not show poetry that much, unfortunately. Yes, that's very true. It's mostly nonfiction or sometimes like prose, meaning novels, right, or short stories, which are beautiful in their own way, but nowhere near poetry, at least in my opinion.
Professor Bento, please.
Well, Isao, my question has to do with your experience writing this project. Would you recommend other students to undergo such an endeavor of writing a thesis in literature?
Wow, that's an interesting question to say the least, but it's complicated to a certain degree. I have found uh, a good couple of complications when I wrote this paper, mostly in the fact that so many people wrote about this. You go into the internet and you Google Ode to a Nightingale, and it will come up, the poem will come up, and then blogs, like thousands of blogs of people giving their opinion. And some of them are just completely with no foundation, to say it in a nice way, right? Like they would just read and say, no, this is a bad poem, this is a good poem. It's, but there are so many, and scholars, they are crazy about young kids. So you will see a lot of journals, a lot of articles. And for sure, this is a beautiful experience. Writing about what you read in poetry is beautiful. Like how much I learned about poetry in general, about myself and how I express my feelings. It was a beautiful experience to write this and learn so much from the poems. But you have to be you have to be very disciplined, because it takes time, and if you want to avoid plagiarism, you need to be very original, and It's difficult. It's not an easy thing, but I would 100% recommend it if you want to take the hard path to finishing your dissertation.
Thank you very much, Isao. Mr. Christoffel, how do you want to handle this? Do we invite them cordially to leave the session for 3 minutes so that we can pretty much discuss ourselves?
Precisely
please,
that. We will let you know then in the group. We will let you know when to come back.
Sure thing. Okay, so I will be leaving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isao. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Marcelo.
Let me just stop the record. Pause. Okay, now, yeah, go ahead.
Isao, after having discussed the different writing prompts, the discussion that we had with other professors about your theme and about your dissertation, we come into an agreement that your dissertation was perfect, and thus you got a 5, Isao. So, part of you,
5 felicitado.
Thank you.
Congratulations. We're waiting for you to have this grade. So, congratulations, Isao.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Gabriela and Marcelo, would you like to be on the photo? Because we're taking a photo now.
Oh my God. Okay, let me fix my hair.
Marcelo, you
Only
too.
there you go.
Don't be shy, Marcelo.
Come on, Marcelo, we're waiting for you. There you are. There you are. There you are. Okay, so I'm taking a few of them. So it takes time. That was one. Wait, I need to put them in Isao's defense group. And it takes time because internet is super slow. I'll do it one more time. Now, Marcelo, you have light. That's perfect. There you go. Yes. Let me see. The last, yes. Very good. Okay, and now, thank you so much, Marcelo and Gabriela, for being present with your friend Isao. And now we would like you to leave so that we can take a final picture just with us.
Good job, Isao. Good job. Well deserved. See you, Isao.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you.
Gabby. Bye, Marcelo.
Okay, now.
Wait.
Wait.
Wait, do I need to leave as well?
No,
No,
please.
it's with you,
I
honey.
need to stay.
Okay.
Okay.
And Professora Ortiz, could you lower your camera just a little bit? There, that's
Right.
much better.
There you
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let me put it in the group and then one more, just in case. This is for social media. You will become famous now, Isao. Okay, 3,
Ay, ay, ay.
2, 1. Very good. Okay,
Great.
super. So congratulations again. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Very well done.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
need to close it
Bye-bye.
in
Have a nice
Spanish.
weekend.
Wait, Ángel, Professor Aquino, I need to close
Wait,
it
wait,
in
wait, wait,
Spanish. I need to close it.
Okay.
The official closing.
Yes, damos entonces por terminada la disertación del día de hoy. Estamos muy felices y le felicitamos al graduado Isao Aquino, Isao Taniguchi, perdón. Fue una disertación brillante y los profesores estuvieron de acuerdo 100%. Así que muchas felicidades. Esto ha sido todo. Y